Hi, I'm Fran Boait. I'm the Executive Director of Positive Money, which is a research and campaigning organisation making money work for society. And our vision is for a fair, democratic and sustainable money system. And I personally got it to work for Positive Money because I was initially working as a researcher in carbon capture and storage, which is a technology to mitigate climate change. And after the financial crisis happened, I kind of started becoming more interested in the problems with the economy and looking to that for solutions. And in 2011, I found myself at a conference, and one of the speakers said something that really resonated with me. She said, we could afford renewable energy if we want to. And she said that when Ben Bernanke bailed out the Federal Reserve, he just typed numbers into a computer system. And both of these things kind of unsettled me, and I kind of thought to myself, it seems like the people at the top don't really know what's going on, if it's really that straightforward to type numbers into a computer system to bail out the biggest central bank in the world. Something didn't seem right. And when I came across Positive Money, I really found that it resonated with me. And so I left working in climate change mitigating technology and ended up at Positive Money. And we work on raising awareness around how money is created. So most people in the UK, in the world, including economists and politicians, don't actually know how money is created. So in the UK, 3% of all money exists in the form of notes and coins, cash in your pocket. And that money is created by the central bank, the Bank of England, and the Royal Mint. The remaining 97% is created in a different way. It's created by banks when they make loans. So if you or I walk into a bank to take out a mortgage, then money is created at that point. Now, banks obviously are profit-seeking corporations, so where they lend to will determine where makes them the biggest profit. And they primarily lend to mortgages and financial markets. So in the run-up to the 2007-08 crisis, bank lending to mortgages increased by 300%. And 80% of all loans that banks were making went into property and financial markets. So we've got a situation where banks create money when they make loans, and they lend to wherever will make them the biggest profit. Now, Positive Money has done a lot of work, firstly, to actually get out the understanding that banks create money when they make loans. A lot of, as I mentioned, economists weren't aware of this, and it was a real breakthrough when the Bank of England published a paper in March 2014, essentially agreeing with our campaign and writing a paper called Money in the Modern Economy that really stated that banks create money when they make loans, and similarly, when you repay that loan, the money disappears from circulation. So some of the consequences of this system are pretty damaging to society and the wider economy, and we try and highlight those through our campaign, and they include unaffordable housing. So as I said, a big area to which banks lend is mortgage lending, and that results in house price bubbles. Now you might think that it's a good thing because more people are getting on the property ladder, but in actual fact, if you look at the 10 years up to the financial crisis in 2008, home ownership was decreasing through that time. So it's really being driven by buy-to-let, people buying multiple properties in order to get on the housing ladder. And that high house prices doesn't really benefit anyone because we all need a home to live in. So unaffordable housing is one negative consequence. Another one is high levels of household debt. So if we think about the way most money in circulation is created by banks lending, it means that for every pound in the economy, there's a pound of debt. So if you have £10 in your bank account, there's £10 of debt somewhere else. And rising and rising household debt eventually becomes unsustainable. There's a paper done by two economists called Taylor and Schullerich, which shows that the best indicator of a financial crisis is the build-up of private credit before. And so they've looked at many countries over 100 years and seen that to predict a financial crisis, you need to know the best indicator is a build-up of credit. So if we're fueling our economy by people and households going into more and more debt and private debt and household debt increasing, then it's really laying the foundations for a financial crisis, and eventually it becomes unsustainable and defaults happen. And so another consequence, as well as high levels of debt, is financial crises and having an economy that is very unstable. Financial crises are very damaging for society and the economy because in a recession, people lose their jobs, people become unemployed, and that kind of can increase the recession. So if people start defaulting on their loans, people will start spending less, which will again result in more businesses going bust and more jobs being lost. And it's important to come back to how money is created here, because as I said earlier, when banks create a loan, they create money. And similarly, when a loan is repaid, the money disappears from the economy. So that means that if in a recession, when people are spending less and actually repaying their loans, the amount of money in circulation is shrinking, which is really problematic, because that means that there's less money, and so a recession can tip into a depression. And actually, in the Great Depression in the 1920s in the US, the amount of money in the economy actually shrank by a third. So another negative consequence of this system, as well as unaffordable housing, high levels of debt, financial crises, is also job losses and recessions. Another negative consequence is democracy. So if we have a system where we rely on the banks to create the money when they make loans, then we are heavily dependent on them. If they stop lending, it becomes a massive problem. So there's a lot of power held up in the banks that create the money, the national currency, the pound that everyone in the UK uses. And this is the same monetary system that pretty much all countries use. In the UK, we have a very undiverse banking system. So most of us bank with one of the big 5 banks, and so they hold a lot of power in the economy. And if any of them, become insolvent, then it's up to the state, the government, to bail them out. So there is this democratic aspect as well, where we are all in debt to the banks, and we all rely on them to create the money that we use. There's another issue around how the big banks control the payment system. So you can think of money as having like 2 main uses that we all use. One is that we can make everyday payments, and the second one is that we might use it to invest to make a profit. And the big banks and how money is created mixes these 2 different purposes. And because of that, it means that the big banks are too big to fail, because if any one of them became insolvent, then our payment system would grind to a halt overnight and bring our economy to its knees. And obviously, no government of the day would want that to happen. So they are in fact too big to fail, and we will always bail out one of them if they became insolvent. And so what Positive Money is proposing, we are proposing a system that we think would tackle some of these big problems around unaffordable housing, debt, financial crises, recessions and job losses, and democracy. And we're proposing something that we're calling a sovereign money system. We think that money should be created in the public interest and should be created for socially useful things. So our proposal is that banks would no longer be able to create money when they made loans. They would actually have to get money from savers in order to lend to borrowers, which is actually how most economics textbooks describe what banks do, even though that isn't the case at the moment. And we think that all pound sterling should be created in the public interest, so by a public body, the Bank of England. Now, we're actually already part of the way there. So around the world, the main central banks, the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank and the Bank of Japan have been creating money since the financial crisis through a policy called Quantitative Easing. So in the UK, the Bank of England created £375 billion, and that went into basically flooded financial markets. It pushed stock and bond prices up, and it made the rich richer, but it did very little for people and businesses. And so what we're saying is that we have a precedent set where we can see that central banks can create money if they choose that it's necessary for the economy. But the way in which they're allocating that money is still having a negative effect on everyday people and businesses. It's increasing inequality, it's keeping financial markets, keeping stock and bond prices up, but it's not doing anything for real people. So we're saying that we'd like to see central banks creating money, but instead of flooding financial markets, it should be spent into the real economy through government spending or as a direct payout to citizens, a citizen's dividend. And this idea is really taking off. It comes under various names, so some people call it helicopter money, some people call it QE for people, quantitative easing for people. And we're saying that we need to see public money creation. So quantitative easing needs to be done differently so that it can actually get into the real economy where real people will get the benefit of that through job creation, through more spending, and it would have a really positive impact on the economy. And also we're also proposing this kind of further proposal, which is that the big banks will actually stop being allowed to create money when they made loans. So those are our kind of big ideas, and the way we're going about that at Positive Money is that we have a huge supporter network. So we have over 50,000 people which support us by campaigning at a local level, by raising awareness in their local area. We have 30 groups across the UK which organise regular meetups, but we also are part of an international movement. So we know that it would be difficult for the UK to reform its monetary policy and money system alone, and that we need a kind of a global conversation that actually none of the monetary systems we use that are designed in this way are working. So we have 22 sister organisations in other countries, and some really exciting things are happening across the world. So in Switzerland, there's going to be a referendum on a sovereign money system. So people are going to vote on whether they want to end banks' ability to create money. In the Netherlands, in Holland, there's just been a big debate in the parliament around money creation and the problems with banks creating money. And in Iceland, we're hoping to launch a commission to look into how the monetary system has negative consequences. And in the UK, we are also campaigning for a money commission to be set up by the government to look into the damaging effects of monetary policy, monetary system, and proposals for how things could be done differently. So please check out our website, www.positivemoney.org. We're on social media, and get involved if you're interested.